Okay, folks, it's your buddy Mike Messier, your buddy. So let's discuss this movie that I saw tonight, Ghostlight, which is an old theater axiom. What's this movie about? Or should you go see it? Should you go not? Yeah, I think you should go see it. I think this is a movie just about anybody could see. I guess in this day and age, you have to warn everybody about everything. So if you happen to be the grieving parent of a deceased teenager, maybe don't go see it, but maybe you should. It might be cathartic. So now that I've endorsed this movie, I give it a high star rating, maybe a 4 out of 5. I don't know. What's it all about? Well, we're in Chicago, contemporary times, modern times. And we meet this gentleman, Dan, I believe his name is, and he is a construction worker. He's one of those guys that kind of waves you on. And this is the first thing that's interesting. I mean, we all experience this. These fine folks in their orange vests are waving us on while we're in traffic and so forth. And we just think of these people as, part of the scenery. But these are real human beings, okay? Real issues. And you never know what's going on with somebody. Oh, my God. So we find out that our buddy here, Dan, has got an irate temper. There's a guy in a nice car that's honking at him, and Dan doesn't like getting honked at. He pulls the guy out, starts choking him. And I guess you could call that our catalyst moment, but maybe there was a catalyst, meaning the events are about to occur. He's kind of daydreaming a few minutes before this to this little community theater situation across the street. And he's seeing these kind of, as they would say, misfit toy people, like 7 or 8 people, kind of, stretching and doing theater exercises and so forth. And then he kind of, gets into this thing with the traffic. And we find out we've got a guy with a problem. That's their typical thing. Most movies, many movies, are guy with a problem movies. And what's this guy's problem? Well, spoilers, here we go. He's got a wife and he's got a daughter. His daughter, I think, is maybe 16 or 17. And it's kind of alluded to, but we don't find out fully what happened. But basically, he's got a son that is deceased. And as things unfold, we discover, but first, wait, there's more. Before we find out, which is why I like this movie, is that they kind of unfolded the secrets. Like, first we find out, okay, the guy's got an anger problem. What's he angry about? Okay, well, we find out he's angry because his daughter is fucking nuts. His daughter's screaming and hollering, and him and his wife are having a hard time with the daughter. Well, why is the daughter fucking nuts? Because the daughter is expressing her rage and her anger that her brother is dead. And why is the brother dead? Well, we don't discover that until later, after Dan, and there's a lawsuit going on. Dan and his wife are suing someone that had something to do with the son's death. And why are they suing? We don't know yet. But in the meantime, Dan gets suspended from work for that assault on some asshole in traffic. And now he's got to go. Good old Dan finds himself wandering over into this community theater, poking his nose in, and he basically gets drafted. Actually, he doesn't poke his nose in. This lady, this little short lady that once yelled at him and his other construction buddies to turn the knob down, turn the volume down, she drafts Dan. She kind of sees him. So she's kind of the Yoda-esque character. She's the call to arms. She pulls him in. And she basically drafts him for a table read of Romeo and Juliet. And so suddenly, Dan, who's this, old school guy, big guy, 6'2", 6'3", the strong, silent type, the rugged Chicago construction worker, red meat American, he's suddenly with all these weirdos and these misfits and these theater people, and none of them are, whoever the fuck, Winona Ryder either. I mean, they're not glamorous people. They're just regular folk in a community theater. And he finds himself with these people, and he kind of gets hooked. Okay, he gets hooked because he's basically making friends. And the point is, he does have some buddies, beer buddies, construction buddies. But now he's hanging out with a couple of guys around his own age, a couple of younger people, some women, and it's all very exciting. And he's doing things that he's never done before. He's stretching and he's breathing and he's tapping in to this other side of Dan. Meanwhile, we discover what's going on with what happened with his son, for Christ's sakes. Well, there's a moment, the play that they're doing is Romeo and Juliet, and they're rehearsing the final scene, the infamous, Romeo and Juliet are trying to do this thing where they're taking poison and so forth, but they time it wrong, and I think Juliet ends up stabbing herself and so on and so forth. I mean, do I have to say spoiler for fucking Romeo and Juliet? But fucking Dan's watching this thing and he's like, hey, can we change the ending? They're like, no, asshole. You can't change the ending to fucking Romeo and Juliet. You can't change it into Shakespeare. And he kind of goes into his mode and he's like, but it's all made up. We can do whatever we want. And they're like, no, no, Dan, we don't change Shakespeare. We don't. And then he screams at one of his theater buddies, and then he smashes a pot or something. He smashes something, and he's like freaking out. And then he starts, luckily, good for him, because he didn't get thrown. I thought they might throw him out of the theater, and that would be the end of the movie. But he says, he starts crying. So that's always good. Here's a good note to self. If you ever get to a situation where you yell at somebody and then you break a pot or you break something, start crying and admit something that's been on your mind. So suddenly, instead of being mad at you that you yelled at someone ferociously or that you broke a pot or whatever the fuck you broke, a television or whatever the fuck you did, a vase or a vase, you can start crying and start admitting something that's painful. And then people will start hugging you. And that's exactly what happens. So it's a good technique. So, they start hugging him and he admits that my son is dead and he committed suicide and so on and so forth. And then on top of that, it's not until 20 or 30 minutes later at the mini golf course, which I always enjoy mini golf, that we see this young lady, this, 16 or 17-year-old girl. She's with their parents. She's mini golfing. And we find out this is the girlfriend of the deceased brother, the deceased son. And guess what? They had tried the Romeo and Juliet act, which we do not discover fully for another 30 minutes or so when they're in this courtroom, not even a courtroom, a deposition, which you don't see a lot of good depositions in movies, but this had a good deposition. So basically it all comes out that the young couple, the son and his girlfriend, and now, do I have to say this? Doesn't matter, but it is true. If you've seen Chris Rock and other folks mention this, or maybe Dave Chappelle, they really do push a lot of interracial couples in these movies. And in this movie, there's an interracial couple with a character that we don't even see, the dead son, because his girlfriend was a darker tone of skin than him. So once again, and maybe that's pushing the Romeo and Juliet thing, although I think that was more like Othello. But anyway, she's a very pretty young woman, and she apologizes to Dan because she's all sad because basically they took all these pills together and she woke up and he didn't. So she's alive and the son is dead. And then we don't find out till later that Dan was the one that discovered their bodies on the trampoline and he was doing CPR. So basically he saved her life. He saved the girl's life, but his son he could not save. So that's why we're in this goddamn movie. So now we're like 2 hours into this thing and all these revelations. See, that's good storytelling, folks, where you give a little bit of a fucking fish, like a little goldfish, like a little cracker of a goldfish from the cracker of the box of goldfish crackers, and you give us one. And then you make us wait, and our mouth is salivating. And then you give us, you break one in half and give us a half of one, and then you make us wait 10 minutes more. So until you get your satiation of fucking goldfish crackers, you're hungry for that fucking payoff, that emotional payoff. What's going on with his dead son, for Christ's sakes? What do I have to break? Do I have to break a pot? So we find out all these wonderful things. The daughter character wants to go to fucking Broadway. She wants to be an actress. The father and daughter kind of bond in this big night of karaoke and all this horse shit. The daughter warns her father not to cheat on the mom. The mom thinks the dad is cheating. He's not. They scream at each other in the front yard. Every time they pass the backyard, they have to see the spot where the trampoline used to be, the trampoline of death, of the son. They don't have enough money, apparently, to move out of the house. Where is this lawsuit going to go? Well, Dan kind of fucks it all up because in his deposition, he softens a tinge and he tells the young lady it's not her fault. So he kind of fucks the family because if they were to sue for wrongful death, because the young lady's mother is the person that had all these mental issue pills that they used to take, that they took to kill themselves or tried to. So it's all a big mess. And the show must go on. The play must go on. So the play within the movie, and I always like these type of movies. There was a movie, I think last summer, called Summer Camp. And you've seen all these movies where there's a goddamn play within the movie. So the whole fucking movie we're watching, and then like the play is always awesome. You know what I mean? Like a good case example, many of you probably have not seen this movie. Maybe one asshole out of 1,000 has seen it. Weeds, Nick Nolte, okay. Nick Nolte, classic movie, which you cannot find. It's essentially lost media, but it's like a bunch of prisoners who put on a stage performance in their prisons, and then they take their show on the road. It's called Weeds. It's an excellent movie. You probably haven't seen it, but I have. And that had a lot of, theater within the movie. So this one has a lot of that stuff too, obviously. So the big payoff is the theater production of Romeo and Juliet. And even Dan's wife kind of becomes like a promoter of this thing. She's booking a venue. She got a free venue. She's got a class full of English students getting extra credit to see this thing. And everybody's excited. The daughter joins the play. She plays Mercutio, who's the brother or the friend of Romeo, and also kind of the narrator of the story, which is quite poignant. It's poignant, for Christ's sakes. So all these things are happening. So I really like the movie. I mean, I wouldn't really needle fuck with this movie too much. I mean, there are times, I suppose, when, our buddy there, Dan, goes into caveman mode, and that's a little bit, on the nose, so to speak. Like, just when he's tapping into his feelings, he has to grunt, or he has to break a pot, or whatever the fuck. Or just when we think, he's connecting with other human beings, he's got to scream. And, so on and so forth. But I overall, I think it's a quality film. It also, in a very subtextual type of way. If you are a theater person, if you've done theater shows, you'll see the bonding of these people. None of them are going to be big Hollywood movie stars, within the movie, the play within the movie here. But they all do a good job of playing, like, that's always the thing. And I just saw a movie like this the other night, the fucking Exorcist movie, the Russell Crowe movie. The same thing. It's like actors playing actors. It's always an interesting thing when actors have to play like struggling actors. Do they pull it off? Do they not? It's actually quite easy to do, to be honest with you. But anyway, I liked the movie. I thought it was good. Poignancy. The Dan guy, the guy that played Dan, looked like a gentleman that had been on like the Joe Rogan show. Like he looked like a guy that I've seen talk on like the Joe Rogan podcast or some such thing. There was another gentleman in the play. God, who was it? The guy with the big bushy beard was, I know why. I think he was on the show Shrill that I thoroughly enjoyed. I think the guy, God, this is all coming to me in the middle of the night. The guy that played the boyfriend on the show Shrill, with What's-Her-Face from SNL, from Saturday Night Live, which I did a nice Shrill review. But the boyfriend from Shrill, I believe, was one of the theater actors in this show, which he didn't even have a whole lot of lines, but there he was. So wonderful time, wonderful experience. I thought it was a good movie. Very good movie. It's a drama. Well, who will you be seeing? I mean, I suppose if anyone's going to, have a career after this thing, I would probably say that the lady that played the daughter, probably because, she is young. and she's got her whole career ahead of her. And also, although the role was pretty small, the young woman that played the sad girlfriend, she did a good job, and she's young. I just say this because they're young actresses, and there's always work for young actresses in horror movies or whatever the fucks. So there you go. But I thought this movie was quite good. I give it a double thumbs up, the old Siskel thumb, the old Ebert thumb, and I say go see it. So there you go, MikeMessier.com. You can see all my wonderful movies on One Man and a Camera Films YouTube channel. Yes, I make movies too, people. So you can go to One Man and a Camera Films. You can see the impeccable. Well, gee whiz, Mike, are you an actor yourself? Yes, I am. You can go to watch Seduction of Distance to see a nice little short proof of concept video starring me. An even better one, I would say, production-wise at least, Many Keys, The Heartbreak Monologue, Many Keys, from my novel, A Distance from Avalon, my other novel, Fight or Play Basketball. Everyone's excited about it. Stickman, recent Alternative Film Festival award-winning Stickman, winning Stickman's first award, very exciting, and all these wonderful things. So that's it. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. It hit my emotional target. It hit me in all the spots. You got the dead kid. You got the guilty family. You got the traffic yelling. You got the fucking theater show. All these wonderful things. So good job.